Imagine sitting in a dark cave 200,000 years ago. The fire crackles, shadows dance on the walls, and outside, the growls of predators echo through the night. Inside, children cling to their mothers, hunters sharpen stone tools, and elders whisper stories of survival. This wasn't just life, it was a constant gamble between danger and family bonds. But here's the shocking truth. Caveman family life wasn't brutal chaos like we often imagine. It was the foundation of everything we now call human civilization. Picture this. You wake up to the freezing chill of dawn 200,000 years ago. There's no roof over your head, no warm bed, no stocked pantry. Just the sound of wind whipping through the trees and the distant roar of predators announcing their hunt. For caveman families, every day began with a question: would we survive today? Danger was everywhere. The tall grass could be hiding a saber-toothed cat ready to pounce. A slow walk to fetch water might end with a crocodile's jaws snapping shut. Even the night was no safe escape. Hyenas and lions prowled close, waiting for a moment of weakness. Unlike us, cavemen weren't at the top of the food chain. They were prey as much as predator. Welcome to Before Flame. Fire. If you enjoyed traveling back in time with me, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next journey into our ancient past. And it wasn't just the animals. The environment itself was merciless. Freezing winters could kill without shelter. Sudden droughts turned rivers into dust and left families desperate for food. Storms could sweep away fragile shelters, leaving entire groups exposed. But hunger was the most relentless enemy of all. Without grocery stores or farms, food was never guaranteed. A failed hunt or spoiled foraging meant children went to bed with empty stomachs. And weakness from starvation only made families easier targets for predators. This was the backdrop of caveman family life, a world where survival demanded constant vigilance. Yet, what's truly shocking is how these daily threats didn't break them apart. Instead, they forced humans to come together, to adapt, and to form bonds strong enough to face the dangers of a brutal world. In a world this dangerous, no single person could survive alone. That's why caveman families weren't just about blood ties. They were survival units, each member carrying a role that kept the group alive. Hunters, usually the strongest adults, bore the risky job of tracking and killing prey. Armed with sharpened stones, wooden spears, and courage, they ventured into open plains where wild animals ruled. A successful hunt meant food and fat to survive the cold nights. A failed one could mean starvation. And the risks weren't just hunger. Many hunters never returned from battles with massive prey or ambushes by predators. But it wasn't all on the hunters. Gatherers, often women and children, searched tirelessly for edible plants, nuts, berries, and roots. It wasn't easy. One wrong root could be poisonous. One unripe fruit could sicken the whole family. Their knowledge of the land was just as vital as a spear in a hunter's hand. Protectors stood as the first defense against danger. They kept watch at night, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. A scream in the distance or rustle in the grass could be the difference between life and death. And when predators tested their courage, protectors faced them head-on with nothing more than fire, noise, and crude weapons. Then there were the teachers, often elders who no longer had the strength to hunt. Their wisdom, passed through stories, gestures, and demonstrations, was priceless. They taught which plants healed, which tracks led to prey, and how to strike flint to spark fire. Their knowledge wasn't just survival, it was inheritance, passed down like treasure from one generation to the next. In caveman life, every person mattered. Every role carried weight. And when one failed, the whole family felt the consequences. For caveman families, unity wasn't optional, it was survival. In a world full of dangers, one weak link could put everyone at risk. That's why sticking together was more than just comfort. It was a strategy that meant life or death. Picture this, a family huddled around a fire deep inside a cave. Outside, the roar of predators echoes through the night. Alone, one person couldn't keep watch for long. But together, they rotated shifts, one keeping the fire alive, another standing guard, while others rested. Trust held them together. A single missed warning could mean disaster. Even in the hunt, unity made the difference. Hunting a wild boar or antelope wasn't a one-person job. It required careful planning. Some drove the animal into traps while others lay in wait with spears. Without teamwork, prey escaped or turned deadly. With it, the family feasted and celebrated. Unity also meant sharing. Food wasn't always plentiful, but when a hunter returned with meat, it was divided among everyone. Not because of kindness, but because every person's survival depended on the group. A hungry, weak member slowed the family down, risking them all. So, sharing became the foundation of trust. This bond wasn't just physical but emotional. Children clung to their parents for safety, elders offered comfort through stories, and families grieved when one of their own didn't return. Those emotional ties forged strength just as much as stone spears did. In the end, caveman families survived because they understood one truth: alone, they were fragile. Together, they were powerful. Unity wasn't just about survival in their time, it was the seed of what makes us human even today. When we picture cavemen, it's easy to imagine rugged hunters with spears, facing down wild beasts. But behind that raw image was something softer: the tenderness of family bonds, especially between parents and children. In fact, without care and love, survival would have been nearly impossible. A newborn in the Stone Age was the most fragile being imaginable. No warm blankets, no hospitals, no guaranteed safety. Survival depended entirely on the constant care of the mother and the protection of the group. Imagine a mother cradling her child in animal skin wraps, rocking them gently as the cold wind howled outside the cave. Her body warmth and vigilance were the baby's only shield against a world full of threats. Fathers and hunters played their part too. They risked their lives daily to bring back food, not just for themselves, but for their families. Every dangerous hunt was an act of love, a sacrifice made so children could grow and the group could thrive. This wasn't just about survival, it was devotion. Even beyond immediate family, care extended throughout the tribe. Elders taught younger members which plants healed wounds, which rivers carried fresh water, and which paths led to danger. Their knowledge was a gift of love passed down, ensuring future generations could endure. It's in these small, tender moments, a mother soothing her child, hunters sharing food, elders teaching survival skills, that we see the earliest roots of human love. It wasn't luxury, it was necessity. But more than that, it laid the foundation for the deep emotional bonds that still define humanity today. For caveman families, survival wasn't just about finding food or shelter, it was about what they did with those resources. Sharing wasn't optional. It was the glue that held the tribe together. When a successful hunt brought down a deer or boar, the meat wasn't hoarded by one family. It was divided, cooked over fire, and shared with everyone.
Why?
Because leaving anyone behind, the weak, the sick, the children, could threaten the survival of the whole group. This loyalty ran deep. A hunter injured by a wild animal wasn't abandoned. Others would help carry him back, treat his wounds with herbs, and ensure he recovered. A child left unwatched could quickly fall prey to predators, so the entire group kept a protective eye. Every person, from toddlers to elders, was woven into a network of care. Even the smallest acts carried immense weight. A woman gathering berries might secretly save a handful for a child who was still hungry. A hunter might pass the juiciest piece of meat to an elder who couldn't hunt anymore but carried invaluable wisdom. These weren't grand gestures, they were daily reminders that the tribe's strength came from unity, not isolation. Loyalty also meant protection. Fires were kept burning through the night, not just for warmth but as a promise of safety. Men and women took turns keeping watch, knowing that predators lurked just beyond the flickering glow. One person's vigilance could mean the difference between life and death for the whole family. In these acts of care, we see the first real signs of community love, loyalty, sacrifice, and trust. They weren't just surviving as individuals, they were thriving as families bound together by devotion. Love in caveman families didn't end with life itself. Archaeological discoveries reveal something profound: our ancestors mourned their dead. Burial sites from tens of thousands of years ago show bodies carefully placed in shallow graves, often surrounded by tools, flowers, or even animal bones. These weren't random, they were signs of ritual, of respect, of love that extended beyond death. Imagine the scene: a small tribe gathered in silence as they lay a loved one to rest. The crackle of fire flickers nearby, children clutching their mother's hands, hunters lowering their heads. A stone tool placed beside the body might symbolize readiness for the journey ahead, while flowers spoke of tenderness and memory. These gestures tell us that cavemen didn't just see death as the end, they saw it as part of something larger, something worth honoring. Grief, too, was a form of love. Families wept, comforted one another, and carried on with the memory of those who were gone. This emotional depth set humans apart. Unlike animals who quickly move on, cavemen held onto connections that stretched beyond the physical. Love was so powerful that it demanded expression, even in sorrow. These early rituals may have also been the roots of belief, whispers of spirituality, questions about life after death, and a sense that bonds could outlast time. In honoring their dead, caveman families built the first foundations of culture and meaning. Love wasn't just survival instinct. It was a force that gave life depth, bound families together, and created traditions that still echo in us today. It showed that even in a brutal world, humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or tools, but its capacity to love. Long before temples, written scriptures, or organized religions, caveman families were already asking the biggest questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What happens after death? Their answers weren't carved in stone tablets or read from holy books. They were spoken softly in the firelight, painted on cave walls, and passed from one generation to the next. Picture a small group huddled together on a cold night, the fire flickering and sparks shooting up into the vast starry sky. An elder, voice deep and steady, begins weaving stories, tales of spirits in the wind, ancestors watching from the mountains, or animals carrying messages from the unseen world. For the children, these weren't just bedtime stories. For the tribe, they were survival tools, explanations for the unknown, a way to make sense of a dangerous and mysterious world. This imagination was one of humanity's greatest leaps. Animals could react to danger, but humans could envision it, prepare for it, and even assign meaning to it. The same minds that trembled at growls in the dark also dreamed of protective forces greater than themselves. And with those dreams came comfort. Believing that ancestors were watching over them, or that rituals could bring good hunts, gave cavemen hope in a world where so much was beyond their control. Imagination wasn't just a luxury, it was a survival strategy. It gave them courage to face each day and strength to endure each night. Here, under the stars and around the fire, belief was born. And with it came not just survival, but the earliest sparks of what it truly meant to be human. As caveman families grew in wisdom, their beliefs began to take on deeper meaning, not just in stories, but in actions. Archaeological evidence reveals that early humans didn't treat death casually. They mourned. They remembered. They created rituals. Imagine stumbling upon an ancient burial site, a shallow grave where a body is carefully placed, surrounded by tools, shells, or even flowers. To us, it may look simple, but to them, this act spoke volumes. It meant they believed death wasn't the end. It meant love and connection extended beyond life itself. For the first time, humans weren't just surviving day to day, they were thinking about eternity. Why bury tools with the dead unless you thought they might need them in another life? Why place flowers unless you wanted to honor their memory? These practices hint at something extraordinary. The birth of spirituality, the first sparks of faith. These rituals also bound families and tribes together. Grieving wasn't a solitary act, it was shared. Around the burial site, people likely wept, comforted one another, and found strength in unity. Grief became not just a burden, but a bridge, a reminder that their loved ones lived on in memory, in spirit, and in story. And from these early burials, we see the roots of something far larger. Faith, culture, tradition. The act of honoring the dead wasn't just about the person who had passed, it was about the living, too. It gave them identity, meaning, and a sense that they belonged to something greater than themselves. The caveman family wasn't just surviving nature anymore. They were beginning to transcend it. When the fire burned low and the stars lit the sky, caveman families didn't just talk about the day's hunt or the dangers lurking nearby. They dreamed. They imagined. Around those flames, elders told stories of spirits in the wind, of ancestors watching from the mountains, of animals that carried secret powers. These weren't just bedtime tales. They were the beginnings of culture. Imagination allowed humans to see beyond the present. It gave them the power to picture tomorrow, to prepare for threats, and to create meaning out of chaos. Unlike other creatures, they could wonder, why are we here? What lies beyond the mountains? What happens after death? These questions shaped their choices, their communities, and eventually, the very course of human history. Belief systems were born not out of luxury but out of necessity. In a dangerous world, faith gave comfort. Rituals gave order. Stories gave identity. And imagination united families into something greater than survival, into the first sparks of society. This is where human culture truly began. Cave paintings weren't just decoration. They were expressions of belief, memory, and imagination. Burial practices weren't just practical. They were statements of love and connection. The whispered myths weren't just entertainment. They were survival strategies wrapped in meaning. In these acts, the Caveman family laid the foundation for everything that would follow: religion, art, language, even science. They showed us that being human isn't just about living, it's about seeking purpose. 200,000 years later, we're still asking the same questions they once whispered under the stars. And maybe, in their struggles, their fears, and their hopes, we see not strangers, but ourselves. Caveman family life wasn't primitive chaos, it was the blueprint of humanity. In their struggles for food, their fierce protection of children, their fireside stories, and their first sparks of imagination, they laid the groundwork for everything we know today. Love, fear, faith, and cooperation weren't just survival tools, they were the forces that made us human. And as we look back at their lives, one truth becomes clear: our ancestors weren't so different from us. They laughed, they feared, they dreamed, and they loved. Their world may have been harsher, but their hearts carried the same hopes that we still hold today. So here's the question: if caveman families could survive and shape the future of humanity against overwhelming odds, what lessons from them could we carry into our lives right now?